just a quick one here on this one. I want to show you some of the filters. Let's see, tons of them actually, but not enough time. So we'll focus on something called the Mystic Vision, and understand this is sort of a combination of two other things. One is the zoom blur, and then something like light diffusion that you see here in the photographic filters. At least conceptually, you can kind of imagine it like that. So let's start with a picture that we will render, perhaps some plasma noise, and let's go to the color one, HSV, and we'll create some sort of a star space scene, and then we'll turn that a little bit less saturated. So we'll go to adjust, saturation or hue, saturation and value. All of these here will have the ability to go more into a grayscale. In fact, you know, you could do this also this way. You can go to image and convert to grayscale, even let's say by exposing to the color lens, so you can give a little bit more dominance to the blues or to the reds, and get some very interesting looking space scenes that way. Alright, perhaps a little bit more contrast, expand the dynamic range, so you see the darkest pixels are indeed black somewhere and the brightest pixels are indeed white somewhere. Alright, so now let's get this filter going here, Mystic Vision. Alright, when you do Mystic Vision, you essentially say somewhere out there's a hotspot from where you want to zoom out or zoom in. And you can say how much of a zoom you want and the quality of that. Alright, so that might be really great for explosive effects, you know, but then sometimes you want to superimpose the undistorted portion again with a little bit more dominance. So let's do that. Let's go and undo what we just did and capture this image. Perhaps you know, it's always good to have a screen capture or a snapshot quickly here, because we know we'll use that in some other ways. One thing I can also do is copy it into the swap buffer. There's a swap or change, you know, switch to or jump to the swap buffer, which is currently blank. So J for jump. But you can also copy it directly there. So now you have it both here and in the swap buffer. You see I'm switching between the main buffer and the swap buffer here up in the title bar. You can see that. No difference. And if you blend the two together, they are multiplied together, so they get even darker, or you know, somehow change a little bit. And so let's say I want to have one of them distorted with the filter. That would be right now working in the main buffer. I can go to the blur. Let's take the zoom blur perhaps as a different example. Very similar. Has this explosion look, you know, like, imagine like the Big Bang in space, what, 14 billion years ago. We got that, and now when you click this, it brings the two a little bit together. You see still a little bit, but it's you want to adjust how much of that, right? I think right click will have some options there, something to explore. Or if you actually commit this, you can merge with swap, and then you can use the interactive undo to say, well, you didn't want that much, you didn't want just this part, you didn't want that much, you want to have it somewhere in between. Okay, so that's an interesting way to use something we've seen before, that interactive undo, or the fade last action, which you also have up here. Now, so we have this zoom blur in this case. Let's do another example. Let's click here to go back to that original image, and now this time we'll also add something to that, which is a nice little nova, or let's see, a 16-star nova. Let's make it red on the main color, primary color, and let's say green on the secondary. So we'll place it out here in the dark. There's a nice little red nova, and another one we'll turn around to get a slightly different angle for these spikes, and do a few more, so we get a interesting looking star formation there. There's, by the way, a couple of choices here for the bloom and how many stars you want. And of course, if that's not fancy enough, we have the total lens flare engine, which will not only produce the stars but also add some reflections in your lens. Stuff that the CG artists in 3D love and photographers hate. You know, you never want to see those lens flares in your lens when you're a photographer, but as a CG artist, you just pride yourself in showing how beautiful they are. So let's see, this one for instance here, obnoxiously intensive. Let's see, maybe, oh, this one here. Yeah, that'll be an interesting one. There. Alright, so we want a zoom blur coming right from there. We want a Mystic Vision coming right from there. So, blur, Mystic Vision. What you do is, you now in the preview you can see where the star is, so you can place it right there too. Set the quality up a little bit and the intensity. And there you go. Now that's the dreamy look, or what we call the Mystic Vision. There is also another one called the Dark Vision in the animated series. This one here is the single frame version, and we call it the Scary Vision. It's sort of the opposite of it. You know, when you compare the Mystic Vision with the zoom blur, the difference to some extent is that the zoom blur affects every pixel, no matter how bright or dark they are, whereas the Mystic Vision focuses on just the bright pixels, so only the light ones get carried away. And if you switch over to the Scary Vision, we go to the dark ones, the dark side. And essentially the dark pixels are the ones that are being carried away. Now that's something you can really use nicely to create shadowing effects, like 3D volumetric shadows, so simulate them. And to that effect, before we finish, I want to create something new. Let's create an animation that's going to be a little bit shorter because we don't have a whole lot of time, so let's make it smaller. And let's create an animation, let's say 5 seconds long, or maybe not even that. 3 seconds at 24 frames a second, that's 72 frames total. And let's go click here to see the frame sequence. So of course right now it's all the same. As we scrub through that, no surprise, no difference, they're all the same image. Let's kill this guy. So next thing I'm gonna do now is go to the filter that renders my sky in there. I have a sky filter, alright, and maybe I'm gonna need a little bit of a more intense fog. Let's go to like a sunset condition, a little bit reddish tint there. In fact, let's also change the cloud colors, perhaps something like this, or something like this. And of course, if you wanted, you could go here, click on the gradient, and totally change which gradient you're actually working with. You can load other gradients from presets. There's probably some that are great for sunset colors, and then there's rainbows, reds, a variety of gun colors like gunmetals. Some of them will look pretty good for skies too. And so you can go here and look. There you go. That's an interesting one. Except I want it switched. So let's rotate that, switch it around, and see if we can find it. Actually, this one here is pretty neat because we have a fairly dark cloud, and we don't have it to have too detailed. Or we can have a very large amount of detail, and then you can change the cutoff, the cloud cutoff, so that it produces that white silver lining. And that's a good one. The high contrast is a good one to show the dark vision or the light vision, the Mystic Vision. So we have dark clouds that should cast some dark shadows. We may want to show some sun behind it, and the lens flares perhaps too. So let's go and animate these. These clouds will be moving over our heads fairly slowly. Perhaps a little bit more sideways, and also they'll be changing shapes. Let's give them a lot of changing of appearance. So as they move, they don't just like swiftly move over our heads. They'll also be changing kind of in a strange way. This is basically moving them through Z-space inside the whatever mathematics we use in this case. And that makes a nice effect of them looking like they're changing shapes. Okay, we see that. So now what I'd like to do is do that same effect we did earlier on a single image, right?